Hmm. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Brachas, Perek Zayin, Halacha Aleph, and God willing, beginning Halacha Beis. In the Ois V'Hadar's edition, we are going to be learning Daf Ayin Gimel. We left off on Daf Ayin Beis, Amid Beis, the last line in the Amid. For those who just got the peek, you have to see Vlad's Yamalka. It's like kind of awesome. So here's where we left off. We're speaking about the uniqueness both of eating and of Kriyas HaTorah. In both, you have to make a bracha pre and post. The sources of it, we had the Rabbi Akiva, we had the Rabbi Yishmael, and other opinions. And the last that we learned was the Shita of Rabbi. We will actually start today's shir by learning the Pnei Moshe and Daf Ayin Beis Amid Beis that will show us how the insight of Rabbi that we learned at the end of last year, that how do we know that you have to make a bracha pre-eating, says Rabbeinu HaKadosh, he makes akal v'chomer from eating itself. That if after you ate, you have to bench. So avade, pre-eating, as we learned in the Rashirilio, there you need HaKadosh Baruch Hu more for nothing to happen while you're eating, for your teeth not to break while you're eating, etc. Certainly you have to make a bracha. But from the fact that Hashem says v'yachalta v'savato uveirachta after eating, in that we self-understand you have to make a bracha pre, and now that's where we left off. And now the Gemara is going to ask Lishitas Rebbe, how do you know that you have to make a birchas haTorah? And the way the Pnei Moshe will learn the sugya, we're going to follow just the Pnei Moshe, is that according to Rebbe, we don't learn birchas haTorah from the pasuk that we mentioned in the last year, Kishem Hashem Ekra Havu Goydel Elokeinu, by Birchas HaTorah, both the bracha pre-learned Kriyas HaTorah and the bracha after reading the Torah, we learned that from eating, as we will see, based on Shitas Rebbe, all the way we're going to be approaching this Gemara. The Gemara is then going to ask, what is the correct minhag of when people get called to the Torah? And I know nowadays you have what the Bal Koira does. He reads there's a Bal Koira. Times of Chazal, if you were called to the Torah, you read that portion. Question will be, does every individual make a bracha pre-post? Or perhaps the first one makes a bracha pre, the last one that gets called up makes a bracha post. And again, all of this, the way we'll learn, will be all of the way the Pnei Moshe understands Pshat in Shitas Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Now we're going to close Halacha Aleph by the Gemara going back to Demai, as the Mishnah gave an example, that when three people ate Demai together, the Chiddush is, they do make Zimun. What's going to happen if a person has food and they don't remember whether they separated the Trumas or Maasros or whether they did not? Did they not? Which is a suffix. And people ate that food, whether there'll be a chiyuv of Zimun or not, and how the Gemara is going to tell us that is not like the case of Demai, as we spoke out when we learned the Mishnah, and as what we speak out when we're going to be learning the Sugya. Now on Daf Ayin Gimel Amid Beis, we're going to have the second halacha, the second Mishnah of this Perek. The new Mishnah is going to introduce the rule that Nashim, Avadim, and Ketanim Ein Mizabnim Aleim. We're going to learn what that means. Actually, we're going to learn that the Zimun that excludes the Nashim is when women and men are together. Actually, we're going to learn that if women eat together, there are no men there, perhaps women should make zimun, as we'll be learning the sugya. We're going to have the other detail in the Mishnah will be what's the minimum amount of food one needs to eat to be chayiv to do zimun, which also means to be chayiv to bench. And even though midai raisa, the Torah says visavata, however midrabanan, that's the ground zero of this machlekes. The Tanakama says kizayis, and so we paskin. Right, if you eat only a kazayas amount, even though you're not satisfied, you have to bench. Ubemela, if you have three people eating together, you have to do zimun and you have to bench. And the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda is that you have to eat the minimum of a kibetza. And the final topic that we'll be learning today, and that will be just an opening because that we will continue, God willing, tomorrow, is the rule that katan oisin oisoi senith la'asara, that one minor may be used as a supplement to complete a zimun of 10, We're not talking about minyan now. We're talking about a zimun. And as we will see, 3 is machayev zimun. But if you have 10 Jews or more, then not only do you do zimun, but you add God's name in the zimun. Right? Nevarech lelokeinu shachalnu mishul. You have to have 10. What happens if you have 9 and a minor? So we're going to open up the topic and we're going to learn certain opinions that hold that, that 9 adults and 1 mamish cotton, bona fide cotton, will make a minyan as we will for the zimun, as we will learn in today's sugya. But let's begin from the beginning. We're going to go back to Daf Ayin Beis Amud Beis. Really, in the Gemara, we are in the last line of the Gemara. But as an introduction, let's go learn the last Pnei Moshe in the Amud. Pnei Moshe is in 5 lines before the bottom of the Amud, right in the second to last narrow line. So Rabbeinu Hakadosh again did not go like Rabbi Akiva, like Rabbi Shmuel. They're not learning one from the other. Rabbi says, hold on. How do I know you have to make a bracha pre-eating? Pasha, that if God says that even after eating you have to make a bracha, for sure you have to make a bracha pre-eating. And based on that, now, I'll read the words in the Gemara, and then we're going to learn the Pnei Moshe. Ad kedoin mazin. Now I know what the Rebbe holds regarding eating. Tleida ma means what will be the source Rebbe that you have to make a bracha both pre and post. That is the way the Pnei Moshe learns. Let's read it inside. Tleida. Minayin lamadnu. Ma means what's the source for brachos? Brachos for kriyas hatoira. Now, Tahash to Rebbe. Pnei Moshe says this question is based on Rebbe. The Alfina Lamazin, that how do we know regarding food? That you have to make a bracha pre-eating, the first widest line under the Gemara, making a kalva chomer from the fact that the Torah says you have to make a bracha after you eat. And ve'im kain, now, sulay motzina l'meil of Torah, mikalva chomer mimazin. Now, the kalva chomer that we had was knocked down. Why is that? With kalva chomer was, remember, that Torah, you have to make a bracha pre, right? Eating, you don't have to make a bracha pre. That was the kalva chomer. Yet you have to make a bracha post. Torah, that you have to make a bracha pre. Avada, you have to make a bracha post. You don't have that kalva chomer anymore. Why is that? Because now we see that God, by commanding the achalta v'savatu uverachta in the uverachta post, Hashem, because of the kalva chomer, is already being meramis. You have to make a bracha pre. So actually, mazin is an area where you have to make a bracha both pre and post. So it cannot be a source for Torah anymore. My mazin she'ena ta'un bracha lefanav minakos v'chululei. We can't say that because it's not true anymore. Because I had a nilma mikal v'chaymer that by eating you also have to make a bracha pre-eating. Okay, the aim sort of kral l'rames. We don't need another source to be meramis. And therefore, now that you lost the kal v'chaymer, ubracha l'toyda minayin. The ka'amar, and the Gemara is going to answer, so we're reading the answer before we read it in the Gemara. Let's read it in the Pnei Moshe. Yes, the kal v'chaymer that we had yesterday, we don't have anymore. But we could still learn Torah from Mazain from a kal v'chaymer. But it's going to be another type of kal v'chaymer, and that will be that ma im mazin. When it comes to food, food is only giving you physical nourishment. Yet the Torah says you have to make a bracha both pre and post. For sure, Torah, chaye olam, it gives you eternal life. For sure, you have to make a bracha pre and post. So look at the last words of the Pnei Moshe. Now the alfinan mahai kal v'chaymer lebracha. Both shalafanel ulabracha shalachoreh. And indeed, the Pnei Moshe and many others understand bishitas Rabbi that we're not looking only for a bracha la'achra, because as we learned yesterday, bracha lifnei kriyas haTorah, we have from Kishem Hashem Ekra Pavu Goydel Eloheinu. Rabbi doesn't have that limit. Rabbi is going to be learning all of the brachas by kriyas haTorah. Sai the Asher Bacharbanu and Asher Nasalanu. Both of them, how do you know you have to make a bracha both pre and post from Mazain, from the kal v'chaymer? So at kedoin Mazain Torah ma, that's the kashem. Answers the Gemara, daf on the top of daf ayin gimel. Oh, I do have a kal v'chaymer that in Mazain she'enoi elo chaye sha'ah. Muzzin, what is it doing? It's giving you more temporary life, physical life. Yet, ta'un bracha lefanav ula achra. So Torah, she chaye ad. Sometimes we have the lashon chaye olam. Here in the Yerushalmi, ad. Ad also means, ad olam ad, everlasting, forever. It's like Kolshchein that it requires both pre and post. And let's go, guys, let's go. L'pnei Moshe, it's going to have that is birchas HaTorah doiraisa. Well, if we learn it from Kishem Hashem Ekra, I know you can also say that it's an asmachta, but you can say that's a din Torah. And as we have in the Babli, some opinions that hold that making a bracha pre-learning is midoiraisa. L'Rebbe, it's midrabanan. Not because Kishem Hashem Ekra, L'pnei Moshe, is only an asmachta. We don't use that at all. We learn from that to say amen. That when people say God's name, by responding amen. Nothing to do with Berachas HaTorah. Okay. Now, right by the two dots, 3 lines from the top of the amen. Now that we learned L'Shitas Rebbe, we learned Torah from Mazain. By Mazain, we learned in this chapter that there is an inyan of when 3 eat together or more, not only do you bench, right? There is the Zimun, Elaine, Shloisha Karoyos, when 3 people are called to the Torah. Truth be told, many times the Torah is read with more. Rosh Chodesh is 4, Yom Tov is 5, Yom Kippur is 6, Shabbos is 7. And the question the Gemara has won't only be for the Monday, Thursday, and Mincha. We're dafka emphasizing when Shloisha Kiroyos because of the connection that we just created. By Mazan, you find something unique connected to 3 that you add the Birchas HaZimoy. And therefore, we're speaking about the 3. Look inside the top Chared. Elaine, Shalosh Kiroyos. Shloisha B'nei Adam, Ha'olam LaTorah, Ha'olam Likre B'Torah. When do we only have 3 people? On Sheni Chamishi, and that was the Nevi'im Horishonim, as the Gemara says, and the way the Rambam says that refers to Moshe Rabbeinu. He was the one that enacted that we should never go 3 days without reading Torah. So it's not only reading on Shabbos. This is from Moshe. Shabbos, Monday and Thursday. Others say it's not Moshe, but it's some earlier Nevi'im. Later, Ezra HaSofer added to that Mincha de Shabbos, right? So people should not use Shabbos excessively for non-Torah and Tefillah, wanting people to come back to Shul. He enacted the Mincha, the reading of the Torah by Mincha and Shabbos. And like we spoke out, this says the Charedim, that for Hu Adin, really the question that we are about to ask isn't only for Sheni Chamishi Mincha. Hu Adin the Matzilah Meboye Beshiva de Shabbos, or in the 5 of Yom Tov, or in the 6 of Yom Kippur, or of the 4 of Rosh Chodesh. Ela Mishum, since the Birchas Zimon, the Alfinin Mina Birchas HaTorah B'Shloisha, again, this is all like we're just linking it to Rabbi. We're learning Torah from Mazin. And even the truth be told, let's go further. Like we learned yesterday, you have a Kal V'chomer, you have a Gzeira Shava. There is this link that we are constantly creating. So now what's the kasha? Let's go back in the Gemara. What is the inquiry? Ma'at Avid Loim. How do you look at them? How do you consider them? What are the 2 options? What exactly are we asking? Do we say that we view them as 3 people who eat together? We'll see soon what that means. Or no, or do we look at them as people who ate separately? What would that mean? I know the Gemara is going to speak it out. Let's jump quickly into the Pnei Moshe, the last wide line on top of the Gemara, right? 4 lines from the top of the Amid. One way of looking at them, or do we compare them, right? Added the Pnei Moshe. Explains the Pnei Moshe that what? That like when 3 people eat together, it's not only that there is a zimun, but the one who is mizamein, the one who's doing the inviting, that person alone makes the bracha for all. Well, only one is making the brachas. That's option number 1. We'll see how we apply that over here. Only one making the brachas is not exactly what he means, but we'll see. Ela kamoi, Or it's like when people eat separately, and everyone makes their own birchas hamazon because they cannot unite together. We don't say B'Rav Mahadras Melech. We don't say Shemei HaKohen as we learned in the previous chapter. And as the Pnei Moshe says, like the Gemara itself will explain. So then back in the Gemara, keep your finger in the Chareid. Keep your finger in the Pnei Moshe. Let's go back into the Gemara. So do we say in ta'avdinun kishloisha sha'achlu ka'achas? Do we consider them like three that ate together? Which means the first one that's called will make the Asher Bachar Banu. And the last one, at the end of the reading, will make the Bracha Achreino, Shanas Alanu. And the guy that's called in the middle won't make a Bracha at all. Okay, so in other words, he's acknowledging, even if it's like three that ate together, by eating, no one says the bracha is other than one, only one. Here it's going to be two. But at least it's doing the minimum possible. Minimum means we consider them to be together. The first guy, you have to make a bracha in the beginning of the kriya. You have to make another bracha post the end of all of the three. And by the way, we learned, when was it, yesterday or 2 days ago? It was yesterday, the Braisa, that what happens if three people eat together and not everyone knows how to make the bracha? Then each one can make their own bracha. As long as you do not cut a bracha in half, that will be more similar to that case. But it's predicated on us uniting them. Or the other side is, ita avdinun, or do we consider them? So each one is eating by themselves. And just like when three people eat by themselves, each one is chayv to do the whole birchas hamazon. Here also, each one has to make a bracha pre-post, not only the first and the last, but even the middle one. These are the two sides of the inquiry. These are the two sides of the boya. Now, I'm going back before we go into the Gemara's resolution inside the Pnei Moshe. He makes a statement. So towards the end of the narrow lines, I think 5 or 6 lines before the end of the narrow line, says the Pnei Moshe, Mishnah, just as a fact, historical. Indeed, in the times of the Mishnah people, it wasn't that every person made a bracha pre-post, as we learned Bereish Perek Al the Megillah. So we already see that. And let's read inside the Gemara now. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Avdima, lo ilamdu birchas hatoyim birchas hazimon elo l'rabim. Wow. In other words, since we do have this limud, let's go all the Rabbi. How do you know b'chlal you have to make brachas by Torah, pre and post? All from eating, very good, and Torah is never read with less than 3 people, and by benching 3 people, they're not viewed as individuals. So the Gemara is saying over here, indeed, that it's one group. And the way it works is that the first makes the bracha lefanel, and the last makes the bracha la'achareha. Gewaldik. Okay. And now, I mean, that's the way we're going to go the back and forth over here. Now, like, and that's what the Pnei Moshe wanted to point out. Now you see why, at least in the times of the Mishnah, not in the times of the Amoraim, in the times of the Tanoim, not everyone who got called up read, but you made one brach in the beginning and one brach at the end. Now you know why, because we learned birchas of Kriyas HaTorah all from Zimun, all from eating, and by eating 3 or more, they're one group. Now the question is, ve'im l'rabim afilu beinoi lebein atzmoi lo yivarech. So the question is, what happens? How do you know that when you don't have a rabbi, when you have a yachid, either a yachid reading out of the Torah, not for the mitzvah of reading Torah, for limud Torah, they didn't have svarim, or if a person is learning Torah Shabbal Peh. In other words, if you're telling me that the whole link between Birchas HaTorah is dafke from the concept of the three, not from the one, even though the Torah says, nevertheless, we are dafke applied, don't forget, by eating, the Torah, you're chayiv to eat individually and to bench individually. If I have to eat, I know that a yochid is also chayiv to learn individually, but the brachos are being learned from the rabbim, because kriyas HaTorah is only done b'rabbim. So what about a yachid? Or how do you know that if a yachid is going to be learning Torah, where do you have a source that you have to make birchas HaTorah? And let me just add a nuance. If we're going to go with what we learned yesterday, that the bracha lefana is learned from Kishem Hashem Ekra Hava Goydel Elokeinu, there wouldn't even be a kasha. But now that we're learning the birchas HaTorah, both lefana and la'achara, from eating, and Torah is only done b'rabbim, the brachas pre and post are only done b'rabbim. Guys, remember that. And you don't have Kishem Hashem Ekra. So how do you know you have to make a bracha before you learn Torah? So on that answers the Gemara. Amar Rab Abba, Mari Achid Rab Yosi. Rab Aram Mari is the name, who is the brother of Risi, answered, you don't need to have a Kishem Hashem Ekra. You don't need to learn it out from Birchas Hamazon. Make learning Torah like any other mitzvah. Asua kishar kol mitzvah shel Torah, just like when a person performs any other mitzvah. Parenthetically, not every other mitzvah. Before we give tzedakah, we don't make a bracha. There are exceptions, but as a rule, before a mitzvah, you have to make a bracha. That ma sha'at ha-mitzvah is just like the rule is. Before performing a mitzvah, you have to make a bracha. Avzu tu'unam baracha. Learning Torah is a chaychad mitzvah. And let me add something very important. Again, all of Pnei Moshe. Birchas ha-mitzvahs is midrabanan. Birchas ha-mitzvahs is midrabanan. If you're telling me that making a bracha pre-limud ha-Torah, biyachid, only pre, and I could not post, because after I put on tefillin, I don't make a bracha after the tefillin. You make a bracha, oiver la'asiyasa. You have to make a bracha before limud ha-Torah. Then the birchas ha-Torah, according to our sugi, is for sure only midrabanan. Beautiful. Because we completely took out Kishem Hashem Ekra, as we are learning all B'shitas Rabbi. Okay. Atkan the Zimun. And now we're continuing to expound on the Halacha Aleph, the first Mishnah of this chapter. When the Mishnah is trying to tell you, like we explained, that even though if people eat that which may not be eaten, there is no Zimun, there's no kivius, and it's a mitzvah haba b'aveira, either or both. Nevertheless, the Mishnah said that if a person ate damai, if three people ate damai, even though eating damai without separating some of the tithings is asur midrabanan, they will do a zimun. And the question is, taka, why? So before we get to that, the Gemara begins to say, Hado Amra, al chayda. Havamine of the Gemara is, from here we can learn that achal peda is if people ate produce, and safek niskanu, safek loy niskanu, and the person he has tevel, and he has a doubt whether he separated the tithes or not. It's an equal doubt, yeah or no. L'chayda, from our Mishnah, you can learn that mizamnin, pashit. Why would it be different than the mai? And the Gemara says, no. Amar Rab Shimon achay de Rab Brechia. They know that b'shasha gazru ala demai, even this man by Yesheni, where there was a weakening in some of the observance, including in being ma'asid, and they made exeda. Even then, roiv amei haaretz choyim afrishin levatayim. Most would separate trumas u'maisres in their homes. That's the way we're going to touch towards levatayim, and that's what we spoke at in the Mishnah. In other words, there are two types of doubts. And that's very important. Not, are you sure? Or are you in doubt? They're sure. There is doubt. But in doubt, you have an equal doubt. 50-50, let's go with percent. And then you have a doubt where the one side is more probable than the other. And that has a huge halachic difference. So even though Demai is a takanas chachamim, and if you ate Demai, you're violating. But at the end of the day, roiv were ma'aset. That's the point. And if I have a doubt whether I separated Trumas from Meiser or not, that's a 50-50 doubt. 50-50 doubt is worse. So if I had a suffix whether I was ma'asir or not, and 3 people ate that food, no, they won't do zimun. Masha'inkin by demai. Very good. Now we're going to go to the Dafayin Gimel Amud Beis. And vai da amra. Where can we learn it from? That's what the Pnei Moshe says on the top. Vai umeheichen shomanu haydina of the suffix from the following. The Mishnah says kuti mizamnim olav. Maybe let's go back. So we can't learn it from the mic, but maybe we can learn it from another din of the Mishnah. What's the other din of the Mishnah? That if a kuti was one of the 3, that you can include him into the zimun. Bisman HaMishnah, the Gemara thinks that there was a suffix, a 50-50 suffix. The ahon kuti lav suffix. Don't we have a doubt whether their giyur was good or not? So from here you can have a proof that the giyur, that 50-50 doubt is enough. On one hand, don't eat, but on the other hand, if you ate, do zimun. No, also not. Amar Baba, tiftor keman demar keman do amar kuti ki Yisrael. And we spoke this out of the Mishnah, that later in the times of the Amoraim, once we discovered that they are worshiping an idol, they used to make little doves, idol getchkalach. Then we said, they're goyim. Ki'ilu, retroactively, we made a mistake with them. But Kolzman, we didn't chap them worshiping idols. The issue was they converted. Why would we not accept their conversion? Because what enticed them to convert was the fear that they had that wild animals was going into those cities in Shomron and eating them up. In other words, when a person converts, not because he believes this is the truth, but he did it out of fear or out of an ulterior motive, that was the question, whether the conversion is valid or not. No one should extrapolate from these words nowadays. Nowadays, almost 99% of all of the Batei Dinim that are involved in making conversions. I don't care what type of kali yarmulke you wear, except a person who comes into Beis Din when they're honest and they say, I'm here because I'm dating, God forbid, a Jew. So that's also an ulterior motive. Now we accept that conversion to be okay, and not only b'di'evet. That's very different. And what I'm saying now is I heard from my great teacher, Rabbi Oman, and it's good to understand it. Why? In the times of the Gemara, look at Shabbos Daf Lamed Aleph. People know that Gemara, right? The convert that came to Hillel, teach me the whole Torah on one leg. You know how long it took him to be enrolled in the Gear program? 1 minute. When Hillel told him that and he accepted it, he was converted right away. Nowadays, if you go to any Beis Din, even in Eretz Yisrael, 6 months. Here, 2 years. Big difference. One of the reasons why we wait that much time is for this topic. Because if a person comes into Beis Din, and right now, what motivated them to walk into Beis Din? This is the sad reality of Golus, is that there's intermarriage. So you have a Jew, who, God forbid, is dating a non-Jew. And at least the Jew is saying, I can't go through with it, you have to convert. That person is being honest. I'm here because I want to marry you. If they would convert that day, that goes into this question. That day, they're not sincere. That day, they came to Beis Din because they want to date someone else, or if they want to get a job, or if they want to get honor, or any other ulterior reason. But if that person stays in the program for a year, we believe that by the time they learn all the dinim and they get involved in the Jewish community and they still want to convert later, even though what initiated the process was, let's say, Shaloi Lishma, B'toich Shaloi Lishma, Ba Lishma. And that's the main reason why our Beis Din will stretch the program out. They want to take away that initial, not ideal way of coming into Beis Din. And now, if a person goes into a Beis Din right now and they're disingenuous and they lie, they don't say, I'm here because I'm dating someone. They say, I'm here because I think Judaism is the truth. That is something that if Beis Din will chap them to be disingenuous, they can't convert them, because once a person is not honest, you don't know where they put the limit of their dishonesty. Maybe they'll be dishonest by they're not going to keep the mitzvahs. As long as they're honest, we accept. Now, in the times of Chazal, they converted you right then and there. In other words, they woke up one morning, there were lines entering the city of Shomron, and they decided, their elders decided, you know why God is doing this to us? Because we didn't accept the God of this land. They went to the Chachamim and they got converted right away. That's why there was a debate. Yet, our Mishnah follows the opinion that they have a din of a Yid. Or the Ispalgun, but really there's a machlokes. Some opinions held this is all a machlokes that became irrelevant after we witnessed them worshiping idols. Kuti kegoy, divrei Rabbi. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel loimer kuti ki Yisrael l'chol davar. So says the Gemara, our Mishnah follows Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and the bottom line will be, then again to our sugya, that chevre, that an equal doubt not only does not allow you to eat the food because maybe it's not kosher, even if you ate it already, don't do zimun. You're not allowed to do zimun. The mai is different. The mai is not an equal doubt. You vadai were oiver on a derabanan, but still rubam were ma'aser. Akuti b'chlal is not related. By akuti there wasn't even a doubt. Our Mishnah follows the shita that akuti is a yid. Okay. Now we're moving on to the second halach of the Spedic. These are very important dinim. We have enough time, even though it's small amudim, to properly go through the Charedim and the Pnei Moshe to properly understand what Rabbi is saying in the Mishnah. The words are nashim, or and avodim, or and ktanim, ein mizamnim aleim. We may not join zimun with them. Now, these words are essential. We may not join zimun with them means, as we'll read it inside, if three women eat together, they could do zimun. We don't do it with them because it's considered not appropriate to have this type of intermingling between men and women. That's the issue. Unlike Tanim, which will be another problem, as we'll see in a moment. So instead of saying this all by heart, today's a Pnei Moshe day, so let's read the Pnei Moshe. Nashim, afilu in baleim, even if it's not a woman with a strange man, no, with her husband, ein mizamnim aleim, because she'ein chevarton no'em. In other words, we don't consider it appropriate to have this type of chibur. You can say, if the man will make zimun with his wife, he'll make zimun with someone else's wife. Let us go bench. Let us go bench. We talk to God in the shul, we have a mechitza up. We're not putting a mechitza around the table, but that's the meaning of we don't join with them. Va'avadim, even worse, because avadim are prutzim, shtufei zimayim. In other words, an eved would behave immorally. The restrictions that a yid has, the negei adinei kedusha, are not lachatchil imposed on avadim. There was no halachic status of marriage by avadim like by a yid, and because of that, there was a lot of promiscuity. So even more, you don't join when it comes to making a zim. Now ketanim buhu ikaplukta deravasa. Here says the Pnei Moshe that our chachamim, the Rabbanon, had a machlokes in the understanding of what a cotton is, and this is very important. And thank God we have enough time to learn this. This is the Chazorah. We learned brachas. Most of us forgot it, but we learned this. We learned this together. So in the Bavli, we have the following question: the Ika, the Savri, some are of the opinion the Dafke Ketanim she'ein yoidim lamim mevarchim. The big chiddush, guys, that what cotton cannot join a zimun. Not only is he less than 13, and let me go into these details now. Really, we'll see here, a cotton becomes a gadol both when he has the years. Let's speak about a boy, because a girl won't be included with men anyways, right? So he has to be 13, and he has to have the physical maturity of the two sa'aris. He has to have growing bodily hair, pubic hair. Now, the Mishnah, according to one opinion, is speaking about someone who's mamish, not 13. Yet, they hold that if this halachic bona fide cotton, not your 13, but I don't know where you're at with the two sa'aras, if he understands to whom he's benching, he could be included in a zimun. Chiddush. Like, where do you find that a minor can count as a number? And that's going to open up the topic. We'll get to it soon, even regarding a minyan. This thing about if you have 9 and the 10th is a minor, we're going to get to that today by zimun. If you have 9 eating and the 10th is a minor, one opinion, well, you can count a minor. But let's go now into the Bible. So in the Mishnah, Some hold the dafka katanim, they don't even know lemim mevarchim. Aval hakatan yidei lemim mevarchim. Now you can ask, how old does a minor have to be to know who he's benching? I don't know, 6 years old, 7 years old. We're talking about Amma Katan. Mizamnim Olav. Wow. So normally when the Mishnah says Nasham Abanam Katanim, Katan means a Katan, pre-bar mitzvah. Not over here. However, the Ikadusavri, others hold, no. This concept of you have to know to who you're benching is a chumrah, not a kol. No, he's 13, right? On the other hand, he doesn't have the second important factor, but he's 13. He doesn't have the physical maturity. Such a person is called by the Chachamim katan poireach. The word poireach means a blossoming, like a flower, a blossoming minor. He's 13. He is still poireach. So here you say, and by other halachas, he's not an adult. For Zimun, if he knows to whom he's benching, which is normally the case, you could include it. 13. Some learn that the katan here is someone who's 13. So why is he called a katan? Because we know he doesn't have the two sa'aras. Yet, since he knows to whom he's benching, you can have a person tinik shenishba, but if he knows to whom you're benching, he can be included. But if he's not even physically 13, ein mizamnim alav, vafilu yudei lamim mevarchim. Now, ubenashim, I want to just finish up in Moshe. Yesh leivnim shemizam nois la'atzmon. The problem is we don't join them together with men. But if 3 women are eating together, let them do zimun, and not let them. They have to do zimun. Women are obligated in the birchas hamazon, and this is an extension of v'chein avodim mizanu la'atzmon. Not women with men, not avodim with men, and not noshim im avodim. Also because ritzus. So that's already. So we at least we opened up that this minor is not the way a normal minor means. Now, the next din of this Mishnah, rule number 2 of this Mishnah is at kama mizamnim. How much food must you eat to do zimun? Be'emes? This kasha is how much food do you have to eat to do birchas hamazon? Yes, it's the same question. The same question. Since we're learning about zimun, we're speaking about zimun. Now, one second. What's the question? Midoy raisa v'yachalta v'savata. And if you're not satisfied, then you're not chayv to do birchas hamazon. Midrabanan, you make birchas hamazon even if you're not satisfied, but there must be a minimum amount of consumption. What is that minimum amount? That's the famous machlekes Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanakama holds ad kizayis, meaning you ate a kizayis, vaguely 1 ounce. Let me go with that. And Rabbi Yehuda says ad kebeitza, which is vaguely 2 ounces. Halach is, just for you guys to know, that birchas hamazon is kizayis, but whenever you eat bread, always, even less than a kazayis, you have to wash. The bracha al netilas yodayim you only make if you're going to eat a kebeitza. And so paskins the Alter Rebbe. So we did adopt Rabbi Yehuda, the bracha of al netilas yodayim. The negei zimun, we paskin like the Tanakh. Okay, let's begin, guys. Says the Gemara. Rab Simen b'shem Rabbi Shua ben Levi. And Rabbi Yossi ben Shol now b'shem Rabbi. So both b'shem Rabbi Shua ben Levi and now b'shem the Rabbi Rabbeinu Hakadosh. No, Amoyda Tana. Now what? Katan. These are the words, and we're starting with this today. Katan oisin oisoi snif la'asor. The word snif means a supplement. The word snif is used in many different areas for many different purposes. Here it means that if you need to complement 10, and we're talking about zimun, and even though the Mishnah never wrote about it, but let's just speak out what we all know, minimum for zimun is shloisha sha'achlu ka'achlas, that we have in the opening of this chapter. But when you have 3 up until 10, the invitation is without evoking God Almighty's holy name. Nevarech she'achalnu, baruch she'achalnu. Once you have a minyan, meaning 10, then you say nevarech lelokeinu. You evoke God's name. So says both b'shem Rabbi Shua ben Levi and b'shem Rabbi that a minor could be made as a sniff to 10. In other words, you can evoke God's name. Now, one thing is very clear. You have to just chop the chiddush. The Mishnah says, Noshim va'avadim uketanim ein mizamenim aleim. Here we're saying, Katan, yes, mizamenim aleim. Huge difference. Our Mishnah is speaking about 3. So if you only have 2, bona fide gedolim, a katan cannot make the third to do zimun. But once you have three, not three, 9, we'll see, gedolim, so you are making zimun. The question is not no zimun, yes zimun. The question is yes or not evoking, speaking out, Elokeinu. For that, Chiddush. Now we'll see in a moment why. Like Ramanashach, is he included? Is he not included? Now we say that what? That it hold on. The Hatani, did we not learn in the Braisa? Now it's not the end of the world if Rabbi argues with the Braisa, but Rabbi's a Tana. But we'll give 1 second. We're going to just clarify. Does it not say clearly ein midagdikin b'katan? Now, let me tell you what that means. So we already gave an intro. That really, you go from cotton to gadol, not only b'shanim, but also b'siman. So let me ask you a question practically. You have a bar mitzvah, right? And you are in a shul right now. So you know the age. How do you know the age? Because halachah, because you trust the father. But how do you know simana? So in most areas of halacha, ein midagdikin b'katan, which means that you don't have to ascertain with Edim that he has the simanim. You can presume he has the siman. We don't have enough time to break this down. We'll have other opportunities. There are exceptions to that. But just this words of ein medagdikin b'katan implies that you don't have to be medagdik. But if you know that he doesn't have the simanim, then he's a katan. So basically the question is, how can you know someone is a katan and supplement? Kasha. Amar Rabbi Yosi. Says Rabbi Yosi that Kaima Rab Simon b'shem Rabbi Shua ben Levi. And indeed also Rabbi, that when did this Braisa say, in the dagdikin b'katan, for a zimun also, don't mean medagdik means if you don't have to ascertain, but he has to be 13. But if he's a katan, you don't include him. Is l'shnei ketanim nitzrecha. There the case was you had 8 gedolim, 8 adults. You had 2 she'im hoya katan. If you have 1 of the 10 was a definite minor. Oisem safek and safek oisem vadai. The way the Gemara is wording. The case of the Braisa was you had 10 people. 8 of them were gedolim. One of them is we don't know where he is. We don't know where he is. It means he's 13. We don't know for sure he had 2 sa'aris. Him, we presume he's 13 with some other. So how many do you have now? The suffix, because a midagdikin you made into, so you have 9. The 10th can be a vadai. So when the Braisa says that ein midagdikin b'katan, it means that you can't count 2 katan. Chiddush is you have 1 vadai katan. Now you have another guy that just became bar mitzvah today. Maybe he doesn't have the 2 sa'aris. Maybe now you have to go check. So no, ein midagdikin. But even the Braisa will allow for 1 to be mamish akot mamish. Under 13 even. Shkoya. Exactly. Now, in other words, Rabbi Yehuda ben Pazi, b'shem Rabbi Yosi, Tisha, Niden, Ka'asora, Mizamnin. He made a comment. He says that when you have 9 people, that they appear to be like 10, you can be Mizamin, means you can evoke God Almighty's holy name. Why do we mean 9? Look inside we're going to learn today is Pnei Moshe Day. So all the way at the end, like 5 lines, second to last Pnei Moshe. Tira, Tisha, Nidim, Kasora, Ma Mizamnin. See, he has Mam, he's like question mark. Tisha. But they are either Tkufin Yachad, they are so close together that you can't be Mafchin. You don't know whether they are 9 or whether they're 10. Can you make Zimun? Can you im dimam kasara mazamnim b'shem oiloi? Right? That's a question mark. In other words, what we're trying to get to is, why is it that you can include a minor? maybe that if you have 9, not 9 with a cotton, maybe because they look like 10, or if they're very close together, or if they're very far apart, can you do it? So he says, Ma ovid misuyamin. The way we're going to learn over here is asuke milsi koloimer dinam kamashoy kanasora misuyamim hoyel v'nidim kasora mazarim m'shem. Yes, you could. That's the way Moshe learns. So we're going to, in other words, 9 that looks like 10. If they look, because they're very close together, they are like 10. And on top of daf ayin dalit, ella afilu katan b'neihem koloimer out the pnei Moshe v'lo yoid ella afilu katan b'neihem. Kiven shenirin kasara mitztarfin afilu laha cotton k'moydamrin, and the cotton oisin snif lasara. Now, 9 look at 10 is when no. When they're very close together. When they're very close together, look at a crowd looks like a 10. You can do a zimun. Now, afilu cotton b'neim, you have to understand what the Pnei Moshe is saying. The Charedim certainly is not saying that. The Charedim is saying that you have to have 10. You have to have 10 bodies. The Charedim is saying you have to have 10 bodies. When do we say that if they look like 10, it's good? It means that when you have 9 people and one is a minor, so the minor is nivla bein atisha gedolah mumashlim. Now I want to just say, I know it's late, just to say these words, that when you have a minyan, you are, every person, the first minyan, they are representing the 10 spheres. And whether you're going milmaylo lamata, and I'm going dafka the way the Alter Rebbe emphasizes that we count the spheres from chachma and not from kesed. We put kesed as already the soiv. Chachma is a dat, is little. The whole idea of chachma is bittul. So if you're going milmata lamata, if we're saying that the first guy that walked in was malchus, and the last guy, the 10th, is the chachma. Or if you're going milmayla lamata, so what's the 10th? Malchus. Malchus less what migarama klum. Means we find a certain type of bittul, sai by the first and sai by the last. Perhaps al pi Kabbalah, that's why we tolerate a minor. The minor, so he's little, kotointi, and he makes the minyan. To be continued. Wait, could be. So let me say what the bottom line is. The Alter Rebbe writes. These are his words, very rare, that when you have, I'm going now to a real minyan, when you have 9 and a minor, the minor has to know to whom we're davening. Mama's what we're learning. It can be 6 or 7 years old. The Alter Rebbe says, we paskin that we don't count him, but if a community counts him, don't protest against them.
That's Sephardim.
So what do we do with that? When you say, how do we paskin? The Alter Rebbe,